Okay, good morning, everybody. Uh, nice to see everybody. And uh, I think this is the first time we may have seen Jean Ryu on her own feed there from Germany. So we'd like to welcome her this morning. Good to see you, Jean Ryu.
Thank you. I'm in France right now.
In France? Okay. Great. Well, a long ways away, either way. Good to see you. And
To be able to listen.
thank you. Thank you. It's great to have you. And also, we have Randall here for the first morning, and I'd like to welcome him and say hello. And if you like, you could say hello too. If not, there's no pressure. I know it's, kind of unusual thing to sometimes for folks to be on Zoom, but if you'd like to say hello, you can say hello.
Hey everybody, I'm Randall. I'm in Batesville, so I'm in Arkansas, not too far away. Can't quite hit Kibutsushi with a stone's throw, but still nearby.
Welcome. It's good to see you again, Randall.
Well,
So, yeah, we can go ahead and get started this morning. Actually, I had said last week that we were going to kind of leave this time open for questions and observations or comments. I had a talk to give tomorrow at Atlanta Zen Center that actually wasn't going to give me much time to prepare, honestly, for this one. So actually, that one got canceled, and for reasons that I could tell you if you're interested, but everything's okay. But it got moved back. We're rescheduling it. But I wanted to leave this open since I'd said that I would do that, leave this open in case folks had been thinking of questions you might want to bring up or just had observations. I would say, especially for Randall, who may not have seen any of these recent talks, we're studying Dogen Zenji's Shobogenzo Makahannyaharamitsu. And I've given several talks. I think Dakota has posted most of them on our YouTube channels, but we're we're about 4 or 5 lines in now, or something like that. And let's see. I could just go ahead and read again what we've covered so far, just so everybody's kind of up to speed where we are. So let me do that. It's quite short. Okay. So I'll read the text up to the point where we are. So it says, the time of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva practicing profound prajna paramita is the whole body clearly seeing the emptiness of all 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates are forms, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. This is the 5-fold prajna. Hold and manifest this essential truth. The Heart Sutra states that form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is nothing but emptiness. Form is nothing but form. Emptiness is nothing but emptiness. 100 blades of grass, 10,000 things. The 12 sense fields are 12 instances of prajna paramita. Also, there are 18 instances of prajna. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, objects of mind, as well as the consciousness of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Also, there are 4 instances of prajna: suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path to cessation. Also, there are 6 instances of prajna: generosity, pure precepts, calm patience, diligence, quiet meditation, and wisdom. So this is where we've stopped. And last week I talked about the 6 paramitas, which he mentioned just before this as instances of prajna paramita. So I had a few thoughts that I've been thinking about in this part, but I wanted, before I say that, or I don't actually need to talk about that, I wanted to see if others had things they wanted to bring up and points they might want to clarify, or just observations. So I'll open that up now to see if anybody has anything. Okay, Jinryu, had something?
Yeah, I was just wondering because as far as I know, prajna means wisdom, and one of the 6 instances is wisdom. So it's wisdom is wisdom, but the other parts are wisdom too. So I was just wondering if there's a difference between these 2 wisdoms, because the prajna paramita seems to embrace all wisdoms, and wisdom and meditation and patience seems to always be part of wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. We talked about that a little bit last week, but I think there are just several ways we could probably talk about it. One of the points I think that you're pointing to, and that Dogen Zenji is pointing to in this piece, is that everything we encounter is prajna. Of course, our life is prajna paramita. So the wisdom, in the sense that the highest wisdom means reality itself. So we usually think there's something that we can learn about and absorb and become wise. But in Zen teaching and Dogen Zenji's teaching, the practice of expressing or connecting or awakening to that reality or wisdom, and the wisdom itself and the person practicing that wisdom become one. So, for example, Shakyamuni looked up at the morning star, according to the Zen account, and said, "I, together with all beings, attain the way." That means, unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. We usually, talk about the Buddha's enlightenment with that term. That's the traditional Sanskrit. That means there's no difference between, Shakyamuni, his practice and his awakening, and the reality that he awoke to. So, this reality is practice itself as part of the unfathomable nature of reality that Dogen Zenji, is expressing over and over again in Shobogenzo. So the other point, this reality contains unity, the universal reality of one body, of Avalokiteshvara. The entire universe, or all of reality, is one body expressing prajna paramita. And yet that body contains all of the hands and eyes of individuality. So, even though this unity of our life, that we're all living the shared life of prajna paramita, or emptiness, we need to practice and take responsibility for our own individual life in order to express this universal life. So this is not something, that the thinking mind really can come up with. So but we understand it once we actually start practicing Zazen and looking at the nature of our life. We see that, we really have both of these elements, of course, as one in our life, that we're completely individual beings who cannot ever exchange another person's point of view or sight, or we can never exchange our five skandhas. Swaki Roshi said we can't even exchange as much as a fart with each other, in his kind of crass, way of expressing things. And yet we cannot express this life without our connection to other beings, without all of you and the sun and the earth and the wind and everything, of course, that exists outside of what we normally call our individuality. We can't survive even for a day, or without taking in the air that we usually say, for example, is separate from us. So, we really can see when we settle down the truth of our absolute individuality and the truth of our absolute interconnection, our universality. So Dogen Zenji, I think he's in Shobogenzo. He's always expressing this reality from different, perspectives. It's because we, as human beings, confined to, language in our communication, we need to take a position. And so one position to say is that there are 6 instances of prajna paramita expressing the profound reality. That's one way to express this reality that I just spoke of, is to say that, we can only express this reality through these practices of prajna paramita. So, this word paramita is an interesting word because, as you said, Jinryu, it means wisdom, or highest, um, uh, let's see, prajna, it means the highest. Prajna is what means is wisdom, but paramita means the highest or the most supreme. So prajna paramita. But this word paramita, of course, also means crossing over to the other shore. It's another way of translating it. Because usually in the traditional Buddhist teaching, there's this shore of samsara and the other shore of nirvana. And our practice is to, reach the other shore of the end of suffering. And of course, in Mahayana Buddhism, we say we do that with all beings. We cannot actually do that with individually. But in any case, so practicing patience, when we wholeheartedly practice patience as one of the paramitas, that is the expression of nirvana. That is one way to express what it's saying. Patience is one aspect of our life that we can talk about. And yet when we actually really practice patience deeply, 100%, it expresses all of the other paramitas, all of the other teachings, all of the other, things that we consider the way. Those are completely expressed when we fully practice one thing as prajna paramita. So when we practice giving, fully with the wisdom of prajna, that expresses the entirety of the way. That itself is complete realization. And so kind of back to your question, the reason that, prajna paramita is one of those paramitas in my understanding is that it's sort of the foundation for all six. Um, I think I was saying last time that actually giving the beginning of that list of the six paramitas and the end, those are kind of pillars that hold those practices up as a bodhisattva practice. So if we don't, we can practice these individual paramitas. We talked about last time practicing patience, for example. If we don't practice that patience with the wisdom of prajna, with seeing the emptiness between the person practicing and the reality and the thing that we're practicing patience with, it can express itself as something totally different than dharma. So, we practice these paramitas to express our own life, the reality of all beings. That is, this reality, as I said, that includes individuality and the universal life. But if we don't practice with that understanding, or that, it's not an understanding actually. It's a it's a practice itself. If we don't engage prajna, if we don't express prajna, we can think, well, okay, I'm being patient. There's somebody that this is just one example in millions that we could give. Everyone could give their own account of a different one. This person that's crossing a boundary with me and being inappropriate. I need to be patient. I need to be gentle. I need to settle down and just take it, or just be patient and give up my own point of view or my own needs or whatever, and be patient and not abuse this person back, or not put any kind of obstacle in front of this person. So, we can never say in every situation what is the right response. Of course, that's not the idea of paramita, or Zen precepts. That's what's so difficult about them, is that they're to be expressed in each moment according to what a moment asks of us. But let's just say in this case, for example, a more appropriate response may be to set a boundary with that person. And, if our karmic disposition is to not set boundaries, so somehow we're practicing patience with our own, um, our own shortcomings. And the practice might actually be to, it might be more compassionate to set a boundary and disrupt this kind of karmic cycle of abuse, or um, aggression, or whatever it might be with some person, because we're we're living the same life as one reality, as I said. But when we're allowing another person or facilitating another person's kind of karmic um, difficulties, we're participating in their delusion. So without prajna, without understanding that we have to step outside of our normal way of thinking things, and allow life to express itself fully in this moment as one reality, we can really be off track. So the other example that's easy to give, is giving. Well, usually we talk about that. If we give thinking I'm giving this person to that, I'm giving this person is giving this thing to that person to help them out. It's kind of a delusion, and that's usually the way that we think of things. But really, prajna, as I said last time, and the very old symbol, giving is really giving the way that a butterfly gives to a flower, or a bee gives to a flower. The bee doesn't say, oh, I'm giving something to this flower because I'm a good bee, or I want to, express Buddhism, or I want to, be a good boy, or somehow I have something that the flower doesn't have, and I'm going to help this poor flower. They just express life together, and our real offering. If we think that we're giving, we can't ever possess anything, actually. This person, everything we get is a gift. And so we can't give anything on our own. We think we earn money. In a certain sense, we need a job to get, money and take in some income. But if we think of all the things that go into allowing that income to come in, the entire organization we work for, all of the people that work with us, not to mention the entire structure of the society that allows this organization to be part of it. We can't do anything on our own. Someone builds a big building and puts their name on the top of it, and they say, "This is my building, I built it." But did that person get down and pour the concrete and, put the steel together? And no, they did not build that building. They may have played a part in that, but so this is the wisdom of prajna. And so prajna paramita is one of the foundations of these 6 paramitas. So we can practice these paramitas without wisdom. If we don't practice them with the reality of prajna, we can really be off base. It's the same with our zazen. Our zazen is part of these paramitas. Morality is in the paramitas, or ethics, or precepts. If we practice precepts in order to become something great, and inevitably judge other people's because they're not great, and we're a better spiritual practitioner than they are, and it ends to all kinds of things like, well, we need to alter the way these people behave or get rid of them or whatever. That's the kind of thing that a lack of prajna or wisdom can lead to if we cling to any of these particular practices or ethics or precepts or paramitas. Okay, I'm going to stop there and let someone else say something if they want to, but I think that's all I'll say about that one for now. Someone else could say something about it if they want, or we could go on. Kate Myoho had something.
Yeah, this is kind of, I don't know, maybe in a different direction, but I guess I was trying to, as I was trying to think of a question to ask for this morning, I I was, so yeah, I'm sitting and I'm thinking, but I started to kind of remember the verses of the Prajna Paramita, the Heart Sutra, and I kind of came up with more of a story of kind of how it made sense to me anyway, because it was like what I remembered was when I was in Japan, we would be driving, and we would come to this a corner, a sharp corner, and there would be like a huge mirror, and you could then see kind of what was around the corner. And I'm like, well, that's helpful, and so you can kind of see if there's a car coming towards you or coming from the other direction, and if you could need more space or leave them more space or you need more space. Um, and that's kind of the story that came to me to say, oh, like the Heart Sutra is kind of like this mirror, and it seems to be allowing us to see maybe around this corner that we can't maybe see, um, if we intellectually try and think of what all of this means, all of these pieces. Um, so then it was kind of like, then it's like I could just put those things aside, like it's more than just trying to figure out intellectually what this thing means, it's more of a just needing to see what's coming and experience going around the corner. Um, and really that first sentence of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva practicing profound prajna paramita as we're sitting in zazen, is the whole body clearly seeing the emptiness of all five aggregates. Like that's it. Like that's all. Like, and then the rest of it is about explaining what all of the prajna paramita and five aggregates and all of these things are, like intellectually, if we need a story to tell us what is being said with that first statement. But that's kind of, is I don't know, does that make any sense, or is that just weirdo? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, as you said, he just says the gets right to the cuts right to the chase. The first line so often. That's what Dogen Zenji does. Is the first line of the fascicle is the entire and contains the entirety of the entire fascicle, the entire Shobogenzo, the entire Buddha Dharma, actually, and the rest of it is just you know dancing around from different perspectives, trying, just from different parts of the mirror, you might say. So yes, one of the points of the Heart Sutra is, I think, is to show us how limited any perception we have is, any kind of intellectual understanding or clinging to the Dharma. That's one of the primary points. And I think, it was probably written by Buddhists who were um, seeing that Buddhist tenets were being clung to as an ultimate reality, and, you know, became something different than what the Buddha actually intended, his intention. Just like I was saying, those six paramitas can be either, the expression of awakening or the expression of delusion, of a wrong inverted practice and view. And so, absolutely, anything we see, we come to understand is limited. So when we have a mirror and when our views are expanded, we, take in a little bit more of this reality for, as some food for this thing up here that wants to be satisfied. uh, we cannot ignore this up here. That's what we do, is we think. We're thinking human beings. We want a story. We love stories. Stories are beautiful and insightful, and yet they're limited. We can't live without a story, and yet if we cling to one story, we're really in a bad way. We have a real problem. So one of the teachings that I like, and Sawaki Roshi talked about, expanded on it. It's like the frog in a well. We're or yeah, we're like a frog in a well, and we look up at the sky. So the sky is the reality of emptiness, and we're, we look up to the sky and we think we know emptiness. We think we know the reality of life. And we don't realize that we're in a well, of this limited perception and narrative. If we make the mistake and we read Buddha's teaching and we think we see the entire sky because we know the Buddha's teaching intellectually inside and out, is the problem. Sawaki Roshi called it like looking at the sky through a straw. And, if you look through the straw, you can really have the illusion that you're seeing the entirety. But in fact, it's only a tiny, tiny piece. And you really see this in technology and in science today. The more the more these five skandhas get amplified, like I like to think of science as sort of one way we can think of it is a sort of extension of our sense perceptions. It goes beyond what we individually can do with these five skandhas, including the mind, and the body. So we build on the wisdom or the accumulated knowledge of other people throughout the centuries, plus the technology we have today. And we see, the more we discover, we see how tiny even our limited intellectual, conventional knowledge is. When we now see that the universe is light years big, we can't even fathom how small our perspective actually is. When not that many hundred years ago, we thought the earth was the center of the universe. And we thought that a human being was kind of the ultimate, at least Western culture thought this. I should correct this. There's a bias that just comes out there because them talking about European, history, of course, but Buddhism has actually not had this view, for a long time. You look at ancient, I think, if you look at ancient murals that were, or ancient pictures that were painted depicting, the place of the human being in the universe at this time, in, Eastern cultures, it would be a very different view. If you look at some of those old Chinese paintings, for example, and you see the majesty of the mountains, you see the incredible interconnected reality of life unfolding. And if there are human beings, they're tiny, they're a tiny piece in the picture. In these, if you've ever noticed these old paintings, so often that's the way that they're depicted, as where, you know, um, there is a period in human history in Western culture where we thought that we were the center of the universe, the earth. Anyway, now we know the reality is actually very different, that we are, less than a molecule in size compared to, to the rest of the universe. But so anyway, yeah, there's always, in other words, there's always a bigger view to take in, or more to learn, more to investigate, more to discover in our practice, to allow this, mind to settle down enough to let it go, So the irony is, we learn enough and we placate and we sort of develop this intellectual understanding so that, in a way, it encourages us, when we integrate it into our entire being, encourages us to let go of all views in our zazen, where we really manifest, this reality beyond thinking. But we need some help with, the teachings of the Buddha. We need help from the teachings of the Heart Sutra. We need some nourishment, for these things going on up here. We can't ignore it. So it's another topic that this, really profound little piece of Shobogenzo is saying. Is that this is the sort of source of all of our difficulty, but this also is prajnaparamita when we practice with it. So we don't ever reject thinking as evil, or this body, we don't ever reject it as evil. We can't practice without these 5 skandhas. There's no awakening without this body and mind. And this body and mind becomes prajnaparamita when we practice with it. Um, Anything else we wanted to bring up? Russ had something?
Yeah, actually, it's sort of just going off of what Myoho said and your response. I think the expanded vision that we have in science, it does give us an opportunity to see more widely, to see how small we are, and to see how interrelated we are. But it's I think my perspective on technology is and on what we gain is it's an opportunity, but often not an opportunity to take advantage of. We continue to apply a limited view to all of our new understandings. I think the whole thing about AI, the whole introduction to AI, could really go either way. It could be tremendous service to us and allow us to see things we've never seen before, or it could really screw us up. And I've been thinking a lot lately about the verse we chant in the morning, and when we can finish the last 3 eyes in the morning. The robe chant is it called?
Right.
And the part that really has captured my attention are the last 2 lines. The last line is, "We vow to save all beings," but the line previous to that is kind of like the important part. Like wearing the Tathagata's teaching, we vow to save the free all beings. If I try to free all beings myself, I'm going to screw it up royally. I'm going to bring my karma to it, or it's just going to prove like insanely hard. The only way I can hope to do anything along those lines in terms of freeing other beings is to wear the Tathagata's teaching. So anyway, that's just a little riff on what you guys were saying. I don't know if it adds much, but
Yeah, thank you, Russ. I think it's a really important point to bring up when we talk about science. especially. And before going on to that, I don't want to forget that what you said about, this line in the robe chant. So the great, so it's great robe of liberation, virtuous, virtuous. I can't do it unless I chant it. So, great robe of liberation, formless field of virtue, wearing the Tathagata's teachings, we vow to free all beings. So, yeah, I mean, it just occurs to me that wearing the Tathagata's teachings is the same as having prajna paramita as the foundation for those paramitas. It's another way of expressing this reality of, if we try to save all beings thinking we know what that means and we have the answer, and you know we're going to do other people some good because we're good Buddhists and we're going to convert them to the way we think. It's one way of being very deluded, but we wrapping wearing the Tathagata's teachings is the same, I think, as practicing profound prajna paramita. It's another way to express that. So in Dogen Zenji's teaching, I think in Zen teaching, this robe has many symbolic meanings, and one of them is, it's a robe that's made up of one whole, but very many little pieces put together, cut and then sewed back together. So it's a symbol of this reality of Indra's net or Prajna Paramita or Avalokiteshvara, a self. So we, that's really the meaning of putting on the Okesa is, to me, is making Zazen, or this reality of Prajna Paramita, our vow and our foundation. So it's a good point. And the point about the science is it's also very important to understand and remember that it's a limited point of view, that it also is just one tiny piece of looking through the straw. So even though it is, in some ways, can be show us how limited our views are, it actually is also a limited perspective. So there's assumptions underneath. I don't want to start talking about this because I'll probably say something that's wrong because I don't really know science that nowadays, it's way beyond my understanding as far as the implications of, science. So one of the things that we used to be able to always say is that, science implies that there is an objective world outside of the mind. And that's one of the sort of limitations, when in fact, there's no proof of that. Descartes said he proved it, but actually it's not true. It was a kind of tautology, what he said. He said something like, I think, therefore I am, right? And so implied in there is a self that thinks. It's already there, like there's a given that this self thinks. And because there's a subject-object relationship, it has to be real, something like that. But actually, we know that, as I said, we can't exchange anything with anyone else. All we ever encounter is ourself. And we imply that there's, we don't even realize what we're doing, that we impute an outside world as a given. We say there is this objective world that everyone can share in, and participate, something that's there that religion used to call God or the mind of God or whatever. But now, with the implications of physics and so forth, this kind of thing is being questioned, I think. It's sort of interesting that philosophy and science started in the same place, and to me, it seems like they're starting to come back together, because there's no way you can discuss the results of some of these findings without stop thinking about the nature of human experience and reality itself. But anyway, so to me, it says whenever we delve into any particular thing in our life, we will get to this point of questioning reality, whether we, question the way we see things or the way we think about things, or we question what it is that a butterfly does when it comes out of a cocoon. If you really study that deeply, you come to some point where you say, this is way beyond the human understanding. We'll really get there at some point or another. So anyway, that's one rambling point I wanted to make, and I'll stop before it gets any more obscure. So the other thing I wanted to say about it was it's the reason what we do here when we sit zazen and we talk about the Dharma, to me, is the most important thing, or for me, it's the most important thing these 5 skandhas could do. But it's also a very important thing for someone to be doing, for people to be reflecting on what it means to be a human being, rather than dragged around by the newest, technological innovation. So no, there's a story that Uchamoroshi used to tell. It's a joke. It's an old, joke in Japanese culture, I guess, and I can't remember the name of the people in the joke. And this is another thing that I always, I say this a lot, so sorry, because it's probably about the 100th time some of you have heard it, but there's this, it's a joke about a man who's riding his horse through a marketplace, and the horse, I think he starts to bite an apple in the marketplace or something, and the shopkeeper comes out and slaps the horse, and it starts on this wild rampage through the town. And the person on top is just hanging on for dear life, trying not to get thrown off. And so the guy on the top sees one of his friends in town, sees him and says, "Hey, Joe, where are you going?" And the guy on the top says, "Don't ask me, ask the horse." And so, of course, the horse is technology, and we're riding this horse. No one's in charge. That's what Uchamoroshi compared our technology to. If we don't reflect and have some some understanding of what it means to human life, what is the relationship of this technology as far as the way it expresses a healthy way of human life. So fundamentally, it doesn't have anything to do with that intrinsically. You can use this technology for something beautiful and wondrous to save lives, or to destroy the entire human race. It's both of it's there, or to dominate people and oppress them, or to figure out a way to feed multitudes. So what we're doing, it seems really, sometimes it seems like really a futile process when the technology is expanding so quickly and exponentially, actually. And sometimes it seems like, the genie's out of the box and there's nothing to do about it. But actually, we really need what what we're doing here, in my view. We need to reflect, and we need to understand how to, reflect this way of life and this way of encountering our life through our society too. Some of us are more suited to do that than others, but now I think there are scientists who understand these kinds of things. People developing this technology, maybe, who understand its relationship to human consciousness and human life. So anyway, a lot of good points and a lot of things that we could discuss for a long time there, but it's absolutely true. I mean, it's like these five skandhas. They can either be Buddha or Mara. In this, in this human perspective, of course. In Buddha's perspective, that we don't know. Mara and Buddha are really just ideas, but that's all we have. So we question everything. Everything I say is a lie. That's what Sawaki Roshi used to say. Don't take notes because everything I say is a lie. But we need to tell, some lies in order to have some direction. But in any case, there's always something else to be said. There's some more exploration that we could do. Or maybe that's the point. Okay, is there anything else that we wanted to say?
Yeah, I had a thought, or a I guess a perspective. So like listening, and we've been talking a lot today about, the idea that is very common in our culture, in Western culture, that humanity is kind of the center of the universe, and our needs and our goals are sort of the most important thing, and taking a step back from that to see how small we are in the big picture of things, from a materialistic perspective, from a scientific perspective. And that's true. And I think that, with our culture being the way that it is, where that is kind of emphasis, that maybe that's something to really put an emphasis on. But at the same time, I kind of feel, at least, that the expansiveness also seems to go the other way. Meaning, like earlier this week, I mean, I had an experience where I noticed there was a spider kind of on the arm of a couch next to me, right? And I didn't want to hurt the spider, so I took a cup, put over it and put a piece of paper under it and took it like outside. But in the process of doing that, this spider was terrified, absolutely terrified by what was going on. And I mean, I had to be extremely careful, because even though I didn't want to hurt the spider, if I made the wrong move, I would, just because I'm so much bigger than it, and yeah, from the human perspective, if we look at it from the perspective of the entire universe, or what, I mean, we're on this one planet, this one solar system, and all of that, from a scientific perspective, going out into the observable universe, and then maybe there are multiple universes, whatever science may say about that. But at the same time, you can kind of go the other way, and from the perspective of that spider, this human being is this massive, huge, scary thing, and then you keep going to the level of the molecule, and how many of those are in us, and the cell, how many of those are in us, and do you go to subatomic particles, and I mean, I'm speaking purely from a material perspective, but I don't think that's the only realm where it applies. But I guess I'm just saying, and please, if anybody here thinks I'm off track on saying this, that we shouldn't forget it goes the other way, in terms of Like we're really small from one perspective, but then from another perspective, we're really big, you know? And I think that there's definitely a problem of like, you know, I guess you might say ego of saying like we're the top. But I think that the ego of saying, well, we're nothing, we're tiny, we're insignificant, we don't matter. That's also an ego, you know, that's really focused on I'm really small, you know, I am nothing compared to all this really big, you know, other things. Anyway, just just something I was thinking as we were talking.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Austin. I mean, it's a crucial point. These are all you know, big and small are relative terms. That's we're talking about, you know, relative truth. So, you know, relative truth means there's no ultimate truth to it unless it's compared to something else. So big only means something if we have small. Small only means something if we have big. So, yeah, I mean, there's a part in Opening the Hand of Thought where Uchiha Amoroshi talks about this, and he talks about, they like to talk about these silly things, you know, I guess there's sense of humor, but he said he was reading an article one time about how the genitals of fleas were big compared to their body. You know, and so there was this article about, he thought it was really interesting that, you know, fleas had big genitals in this relative realm of the flea. And then he made some jumps, you know, and he said, well, I suppose from, you know, a spaceship rotating around the Earth, we look like, you know, some kind of a parasite on the genitals of a flea. We look about that size. So it's there's always some other way to look at things, to express things. So you know, it occurred to me too. The thing is, if we stick in any view, if we stick to this view of, like, for example, that we're very small and insignificant and don't have any power, we can make a mistake by saying, well, you know, nothing matters. Look at the perspective or the mess we're in today with global warming and so forth. We're so insignificant that we can't do anything about it. When, of course, we had a lot to do with that. You know, I mean, we do have some responsibility and some way that we need to understand. It's the other inexplicable, or the inexpressible part of the Dharma, that our position is infinitely small and yet infinitely important. So this moment is, you know, we're just a tiny, tiny piece of this reality, and yet it's almost like the entirety of reality exists in the way we express it. So that's why it's so difficult to speak of this, because once we start saying we think we have it and we know how to look at it and express it, we're stuck and we're outside. So, I mean, it also reminded me too of, I'm always impressed at this part of Genjo Koan where Dogen Zenji is talking about this, how different beings see the same reality in different ways according to their karma. And at the end of that, I think it's this part where he says, and it's the same in something about, it's the same in the ocean, that he's talking about how beings see the ocean. And he said, it's the same in a tiny drop of water. There are whole worlds in tiny drops of water. And he said that before microscopes, or actually Mahayana Buddhism said these kinds of things before we had any of this technology. You know, I don't know where they got this wisdom from, but even way before Dogen Zenji, you know, this teaching of the entire universe being contained in a a piece of dust was expressed, and now we kind of see, even literally, this is actually true from a scientific perspective, that there are worlds beyond our imagination on a microscopic level, and then of course these worlds are even more fabulous and unexplainable when we get down to the subatomic level. But it's a good point. I mean, it's another way whenever we express something, we have another way that we can say sort of opposes it, or we're stuck, as I say, unless we always remember there's another way to view things. So it's a good point. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay. Anything else today before we sign off? All right. So next week I will be doing a sesshin. So I won't give a Dharma talk, but usually on Saturdays we do a half day sitting. So that would be from 4:10 a.m. till noon. There will be zazen, except for 6 o'clock. We have breakfast from 6 to 7. So, okay, thank you everyone for your practice, and I hope to see you again soon. May this merit extend universally to all, so that we, together with all beings, realize the Buddha way. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.